Once outside, it surprised her how large the deck seemed and how far it appeared to stretch before her, now that most of the passengers had moved below the deck. All she could see were the scattered ones now, the outcasts, still moving about in a compulsive tread, airing private and sultry thoughts in the wind, and a few of the younger couples she had seen earlier, sharing coats and coarse blankets to cover a knuckled embrace. They hardly as much as looked up as she passed them. Every now and then she tossed a flighty glance in the direction of the red stripe of the Genovese flag, harpooned into the back of the ship like an insult to the thing the Ostia Antica really stood for, or at least what it stood for to her. The city had fully faded by now, and out to starboard, the coast was indistinct, green and mountains, and shyly hidden away behind low-hanging clouds. On occasion, the ship would blow its horn in salute to the coastal towns some of the passengers on board had come from, and each time it did, small groups would hurry outside for one last glimpse of a coastline that was in many ways familiar as it was strange to them now. Her hair had been pulled back, but she kept wiping invisible strands away from her face as she took in her surroundings. Her face was without expression, again revealed that same detachment that had clung to her for the past 8 days, that two-dimensional mask that had always distinguished her so, in good ways and otherwise. The question whether she would miss any of this, again, was like an echo that kept bouncing through it all, yet comprising neither words nor any other kind of recognizable shape. And in the end, it had left her completely unmoved besides. The water was choppy and still leaning toward a mournful, darkish grey. She wrapped her hands around the railing and stared into it, mind a blank, and without realizing, her lips shaped words, unhinged and random, but words nevertheless. She reached into her coat, and with something that was halfway between annoyance and genuine curiosity this time, she reread the bureaucratic prose on her traveling papers to see if she could still recognize herself in any of the half-truths it proclaimed. She ran her fingers over the emblem of the Doria Shipping Company and then skipped to the bottom, passing right over the segment that pronounced her free of tuberculosis and glaucoma to the section that specifically declared her not married. Probably the most accurate part of the entire document, she whispered to herself in a shaky, baptismal voice. Did you know that the Ostia Antica had its maiden voyage only 2 years ago? Startled, she turned and found Emilio Toffolo's magnified eyes were holding her in a friendly but strangely devious little smirk behind his spectacles. In the light of day now, she could sense a hepatitic aura surrounding him, which she had not been aware of before. Did the Scazzo sisters chase you out of the cabin at last, Signora Toffolo? Hardly, miss. I assigned them the care of a bottle of some outstanding anisette and left on my own accord. She returned his smile and turned toward the water again. How long have you been standing there? She asked, the deliberateness in her words betraying how much she was plotting the conversation ahead. Long enough to hear you talk to Susano O, dear, he replied in a carelessly boyish tone. I believe I will forgive your impertinence, Signora Toffolo, but only because you managed to dodge the wrath of our cabin mate so eloquently today. It wasn't my intention to eavesdrop, miss. but you just happened to speak as I was approaching, and don't worry, I have heard people say prayers before. What makes you think I was praying? Oh, it just sounded like it. Once more, my apologies. He moved to her side and propped his elbows on top of the railing, just short of having to tiptoe in order to reach. Who did you say? Susanna, oh, it's the god of the sea in the Shinto religion of Japan, but only because it sounded as if you were praying, that's all. See, in Japan it isn't uncommon for sea travelers to spill a couple of words into the waves, much in the way you did yourself just now. That is, if your words had been a prayer, of course, for protection perhaps, on the long journey ahead, or for it to bring you luck in whatever may follow after you get to where you're going. Well, it wasn't a prayer, I mean. And if there were such a thing as a god of the sea, what makes you so sure that would be a man anyway? Well, you would have to take it up with the people of Japan, I suppose, the functionary replied. And besides, I don't think he would care in the least if you prefer to think of him as something other than a man.